In this video, I'm going to show you how to create real alignment with your spouse around a parallel income path so you can build it together and feel like home is a solid foundation while you do it. So just for some quick context, I went from being a corporate IT leader and chief of staff to a two-time TEDx speaker, Amazon best-selling author, and a business owner, all while I was still working full-time. And I didn't do it by blowing up my life with a massive leap or going alone. I did it by building a parallel path of income in a way that protected my job, my reputation, and my family responsibilities until it was ready to fully replace my salary. And over the years, I've learned something really important here. There are 4 elements every couple needs to be aligned with before a parallel income path feels like a smart move in this season of your life. If you put them together, you get the S.Y.N.C framework. If you miss one, you'll feel it. I'm talking about tension, uncertainty, and disconnect. But if you put all 4 in place together, home becomes the foundation that makes everything possible on this path. So today I'm going to break down S.Y.N.C so you can use it immediately, starting with your very next conversation. Now, here's the thing. Most people approach this conversation with, hey, guess what? I got this great idea. And after a few minutes of trying to convince your spouse that it is a great idea, maybe you hear no. Now, most people think their spouse is saying no to the business itself. In reality, your spouse is simply reacting to what the idea represents for the family right now. I'm talking about uncertainty, risk, more time disappearing, you becoming less available, a future that feels unstable. All of that combined comes out as no. So maybe you've thought about this. And maybe you're saying to yourself, I'll just do this on my own because I know that conversation always turns into some sort of friction. And that's where most high performers get stuck. You feel ready mentally, emotionally, and logically, and then you want to bring it up again, and your spouse shuts it down. And it's usually not a debate. It's usually with a look or a tone. I don't think this is a good idea, or what would you even do? Then what usually happens is that these high performers tend to go in one of 2 different directions, okay? They back off and they tell themselves they'll revisit it later, and later turns into months and eventually fades away, or they avoid the conversation and they start building alone in silence, hoping they can prove it to their spouse. And look, if you're partnered up or married, please don't go solo because I know what can happen. It can create stress, secrecy, resentment, all while you're simply trying to create freedom for your family. So I'm going to walk you through the framework I use with clients that opens the door for real dialogue and a real decision together. It's called S.Y.N.C. Oh, and by the way, if you want my free guide that shows you how to turn the skills you already have into a parallel income path you can build alongside of your job and eventually use it to replace your salary, grab it in the link in the description or scan the QR code on your screen right now. So the first part of the S.Y.N.C framework is safety. Safety means that this path fits inside of real life as it is right now without risking your income, your reputation, or your family's stability. And I'm talking about real bills, real responsibilities, real time, real energy, all of those aspects that are present right now. Here's a simple way to think about safety. When engineers build a bridge, they don't hope it holds. They set load limits. They add safety margins. They stress test it. They build it for contingencies, growth, expansion, all that. That's exactly how a parallel path should work at home. Your spouse doesn't need hype or to be convinced. They want clarity. They want containment. They want certainty. So safety has 4 parts: guardrails, milestones, a downside plan, and a protected home. Now, guardrails answers the question your spouse is already asking. How much of this is going to consume the limited time and bandwidth that we already have? So what you do is you bring 2 limits to the table, a time limit and a money limit. From a time perspective, you can say, look, for the next 2 weeks, I'm only going to be working 3 hours a week on this, and Saturdays and Sundays are for the family, period. And look, every home is different, so you have to build this together. Even one focused hour a week can be enough to start, okay? So from a money perspective, for the next 30 days, you can say, I'm just capped at $50 to $100. No ads, nothing like that, because guardrails create the signal that this stays contained. Now, the next part of safety is milestones. Once guardrails are clear, your spouse's brain usually moves to, okay, when does this get bigger? What does that look like? That's when you set milestones. And milestones answer what has to be true before the bigger moves can happen. And this doesn't block you, it creates earned trust. So here's a simple milestone ladder. 2 paying clients first, 1,000 a month for three straight months, a separate runway account for anything major changes. Because honestly, this is how banks approve mortgages. Proof creates confidence. Now, a downside plan after guardrails and milestones, there's typically a fear most people don't say out loud. What if this doesn't work? That's a big question. It's a big fear. So address it directly with a downside plan. And this is huge because it signals maturity. An example downside plan is if we aren't seeing traction by 30 days, we can adjust and review at day 60. And if it still isn't working by day 90, I pause and we decide what's worth continuing. Another practical version is if work gets chaotic and I can't keep my time cap that I set, I reduce to 2 sessions a week versus 3. You see, smart people don't avoid risk, they manage it. And the fourth part of safety is a protected home. The final layer here. This answers the question your spouse may never ask directly. Will this take over our lives? So you make it clear. Dinner stays dinner, no laptop on the couch, date night stays locked in, and add one more. If I start to get snappy or obsessive about this, I treat that like a warning light and we reset the plan. You see, home protection is recovery, and recovery sustains performance, okay? So that's safety. Guardrails, milestones, a downside plan, and a home protected. And when safety is clear, your spouse can actually hear the next part, your why. Because the question shifts from safety to meaning. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to do this? And here's the thing, your why turns this into something bigger than just a side project. It becomes a real reason. I want you to think about JFK setting the goal to go to the moon. He was naming a purpose so clear that effort felt like it was going to be worth it. That's exactly what your why does. And your why also has 4 parts. The real reason, the shared win for the family and your spouse, a values match, and the cost of staying stuck. So examples of the real reason could be that, look, you see me coming home frustrated because work is bleeding into my evenings and on the weekends, and I want my time back with the family. Or I got promoted in title and workload, but without the income increase. I want options that don't rely on one paycheck, right? That's the real reason. The shared win is the part your spouse can feel: more presence, less stress, more control, more time together, moments you stop missing. And value match means you're building a life that makes sense for your family, not just chasing an income goal. And finally, the cost of staying stuck. If I stay stuck in this cycle for 3 more years, the cost is more burnout, more regret, less time together, and my income staying capped by decisions outside of our control. And that honesty matters, all right? So that's your why. The next step is next steps. And this is where alignment becomes really practical because tension comes from the unknown. And next steps gives your spouse something they can see. And it also has 4 parts: a realistic plan, clear roles, a scoreboard, and a check-in date. Now, when it comes to the realistic plan, I'm not talking about a 40-page business plan. It's a simple outline: what you're testing first, who you're going to test it with, how you'll validate it, when you're working on it, what boundaries do protect the home life. The second part are the clear roles. You see, support typically breaks down when roles get muddy, so define them clearly. My role is execution and follow through, and your role is calling it out if this starts to spill into the home life. right? Those are some examples. Now, a scoreboard keeps it grounded and prevents daily pressure. You're going to be tracking simple things like conversations started with people, outreach, offers made, in revenue collected, hours spent. Again, so this is so the guardrails stay connected. And finally, a check-in date. This creates predictability. Let's check in every Sunday. We look at what happened, what we learned, and what we're doing next. Because a steady rhythm calms the whole process. And now the final part of sync is commitment, right? Commitment turns I get it into I'm with you. And this last piece has 4 parts as well. The agreement, what support really means, it's defined, boundaries honored, and 1-sentence pledge. So for the agreement, you can say, I'm committing to the time cap, the money cap, the milestones, and the check-in and the safety. And I want us on the same page. When you're talking about support being defined, support needs to be observable. When I'm in my time block, I get uninterrupted focus. Or when I have a hard day, remind me why we're doing this. And when I win, celebrate with me. That's real support. Then you've got boundaries that are honored. No business talk at dinner. No spending outside of the cap. No skipping family commitments that are already on the calendar. And then finally, the 1-sentence pledge. Pick a sentence you both can remember on a hard day. We build this with guardrails and we build it together and we protect it together. All right, guys, so that's sync, safety, your why, next steps, and commitment. When you put all 4 together, you stop carrying this alone. Home becomes your foundation and you build a parallel income path with real support. If you want help building your income path with guardrails and a plan that fits your real life, comment sync in the comments below and I'll send you the next step.